Hi, everyone. Welcome back from lunch for a demo of Vemo. I also want to introduce a couple colleagues here, Kim Vierling, Chris Reese. Chris Reese is not only our chief data scientist, but he's also the keeper of our QRC code if you want to schedule a demo. So he does both things. Great. So anyway, this will be a brief demo to kind of just get in a little bit of our capability. We're sort of everyone feels they're unique, but we're sort of a unique company here because we're a people analytics and workforce analytics company that also has a very strong focus in workforce planning. And so we've had a lot of passion around this topic for a long time. We take an analytics-driven approach to planning, where we have a whole predictive modeling ecosystem that sits within it. So I'm going to mainly present items around planning today for a little bit, and then also get into a couple other features around the analytics and in our AI module as well. So I'm going to demo, maybe I'll hide my toolbar so you're just seeing that. And so when people go into our tool, it's a status-driven tool, and we have a belief that for organizations who are doing planning that even though it's an HR-driven approach and that you need to focus on your people and your roles and your skills, it's very important to get the business involved and be able to see the plan, because the business says I wasn't there that day, then they don't actually execute on that and do that. And so there's a whole piece around how do you get the business to be more strategic around workforce planning. For us, the SWP is really, it's this process where you actually bring this to the business and allow them to do this work. And so when I go in and I look at a plan, I'm just going to do a roll up. Our tool is lightning fast and allows an organization to very quickly roll up its entire company and see different aspects of its workforce. So there's a whole element around our tool that is around just the reporting piece and understanding the analytics around the plan. There's a whole piece around actually doing the plan as well. So what we like to highlight for our organizations is that we build a predictive model around demand as your starting point that says this is what our likely future workforce is. And the theory here is that organizations typically have a hard time building things from scratch, but an easier time to edit things that they see. So they can look at their workforce in either great detail, granular jobs, or very high level details for organizations and locations, and do this plan, and they can understand over a number of years, this is what my future workforce looks like in terms of my adds and reductions in workforce, where I'm going to end up. They can understand all that in terms of the cost of the workforce too. So not just headcount, but also FTE to service finance, and cost of labor to service finance as well, and understand what's that attrition look like? What are my gaps and surpluses in the workforce? And then they can start diving into this and look at sort of any level and plan at any different level and say, maybe I just want to focus on my workforce in terms of my job disciplines and my level. And so this specific planner can then really hone in and start looking at large buckets of work as well and see, okay, if a lot of engineers at level 2, what does that look like in terms of gaps and surpluses and things like that? Then the next thing I would like to show you is that we have a sophisticated view in terms of historically what you've done in your headcount, and then your futures of your headcount as well, and then getting into as the actuals move across. So we're very big in terms of the concept of measurement. A lot of the beauty in workforce planning happens in the actual measurement of the plan, where you evaluate what did we plan to do. You never actually end up doing that. What are we at, and what are the reasons? Are they acceptable within risk reasons for doing things, or are they actually that the business has changed substantially that we need to sort of reiterate around the process? So the measurement is what makes it very powerful over time to be constantly measuring. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people know in analytics, they stand up a program, people get really excited about doing things with predictions and doing other things like that. And sometimes you kind of forget to take that baseline and measure. So it's really important that measurement's what really stands up a long, successful program. We also like to dive into the skills. So skills is a topic of much debate about how important they are to different organizations, where some people are saying skills that's yesterday, everyone was talking about, we're not talking about today. We have an approach where we use AI to generate what the skills are with demand. And if an organization has the people skills, we can then compare those gaps, like in this chart, and say, change management. We deliberately put that because that's always the biggest gap in all companies. But change management, different types of skills, what are those gaps of the future over time? and how are they built up by our net new demand and our attrition? So where are we going to get those skills in terms of information? Then a couple other things that we really focus on looking at is things around what the future workforce gap looks like. So this is an area that we're very excited about because we're focusing a lot in terms of also external market data. And in the near future, we'll be looking at combining external market data that will actually allow to make on-the-fly build versus buy decisions around this. But in this case right here, you're able to highlight and see what's my demand-supply gap over a period of time. And this gets into our whole predictive modeling ecosystem where even if you don't actively plan, Vemo is telling its customers how many people are you going to lose to attrition. And that's built on individual employees rolling that up. It's also telling them how many people are going to be moving around their organization through lateral transfers and mobility. And we're even doing things like intern conversions and things like that. So when you want to highlight those things, you're able to say, what does our workforce plan mean in terms of that future gap action planning? And so you're seeing for 2025, and maybe we're looking right here, but maybe you want to know by director what that looks like. You can tell each director, here's where your biggest gaps are in your organization. And it's your net changes, that's a little small number, leads to a big gap. Gets into information about like how many promotions in am I going to have, how many filling jobs through people moving up levels, how many laterals out in terms of people moving out, and then how many, perhaps interns, et cetera. And then what are my buy? What's my hires after all this? Like how many people do I actually need to go to market for? So we think that's an incredibly valuable part of the workforce planning experience to really get into and say, okay, you've done all this work. It's great. You've had all the strategic discussions. How do we execute on that? We want to give you that roadmap as well. The next thing I want to run through real quickly here is our diversity model. So this is an area where we're integrating with external data and we're seeing, this is a gender diversity example, but we're seeing what is the availability of talent in different markets. And so for our customers who are global, focusing on gender diversity, one of the key challenges they're facing today is that they have a lot of AI initiatives, and those AI initiatives are actually taking headcount down. Most workforce plans actually have declining headcount. So what's the impact of that? Like how's that going to result in terms of our net diversity and achieving our goals? And for people who have involved in analytics and D&I type initiatives for a long time, they'll know that there are a lot of ineffective goals, right? Things that can never be achieved. So it's really good to know what those are. So if you want to look forward right now, maybe this is like 2025, not enough actionable. By the end of 2028, what will be my future gender diversity with this specific plan? And then the sliders indicate that you can actually model this and sort of say like, hey, if we're below market for certain geographies, or if our attrition is too high or our mobility is too high, you can start to toggle on these and craft and save your own plan around what will get you to your target that you're at. So this is, again, the idea around execution. So anybody who's been in the workforce planning realm for a while will know that there's a ton of excitement originally in it, and then you don't want to have that fall off when you get into sort of that sophomore and next year effort where you're like, what do we do with this workforce plan? How do we do this? And it's really tying into these future outcomes. So that's my quick demo, very short around planning. There's a lot of stuff around editing. So I can go into individual plan here as well, click on this plan, do whatever actions I want to do as well, and add demand, do different things, do different functions, et cetera, like that. But I don't have that much time to share that. So I'm going to go into next and talk about a little bit our analytics and our presentations modules. This is where it's really a pure analytics idea. And our notion around this is that we like to combine that data we pull from customers with all the data we generate. So we're sort of interesting that way that we're generating a lot of our own novel data and then combining it in that way. And it allows to look at things like a workforce planning gap plan. So this is all data coming out of Vemo, which basically says, here's your measurement on your headcount. Here's your measurement on the cost of labor. Here are your top forecast gaps. And in our programs we have, this allows you to really democratize and open this up to all the people who want this type of information. Even if they don't get into planning itself, they can do those things. They can create notes. They can look at attrition. They can look at those gaps over a period of time. They can understand for their business area, for whatever views and filters, what they want to do. But we do combine it with other sort of more internal data, just like workforce trend and insights in terms of the different information we have around waterfalls. This particular module is designed to be all PowerPoint friendly. So it's a PowerPoint generator. It allows people to create presentations at any different levels, mark them up, make comments, and use them in the business. So I think I'm running a little short of time, but I'm going to hit one more module. This is our Ask Ray module. And this allows you to ask questions around both analytics and planning in a natural language format. And so our approach to AI has been very practical. What we want to do is we're using it to generate all the queries that run in our system, protected within the security, all those things like that. They'll help answer questions. So you can say, what will my head count? Thinking. So this then is the predicted total headcount at the end of the year. So what our vision around this is that we're thinking then the further process of letting more people know about these tools and looking into our different content is really to go in and be able to answer questions. And if you toggle over to our analytics channel, which you can also see the demo here, you can ask a lot of detailed questions around it as well. Like, how many interns did we? And so on and so forth. So you can ask questions. And the way we're addressing this too in terms of the content is basically to be able to always link through and click on the different key content that you might have around it. So it tells you here is all the different information, and we're using almost like a finder concept to go and get that content. So the idea that we have really is that to kind of cut through some of the dashboard exhaustion people have and all different content and freshening up, we can always go and right there and click on it. So I'll get right back to my gender diversity content right here. We'll load that up and it'll say the different information about it or something like that. So how am I for time? Are we 1 o'clock? We're coming right up, or 2.5 minutes? We started 2.5 minutes late. So I think I thought it was ending right at 1, so I talk quickly. So I guess the final thing I would say about our tool that's really interesting is that we've really designed it so that once it's stood up, that our customers can do a very large amount of stuff for themselves. So we have this idea that out of the box, it's pre-created where there's content where we can stand up this up. And we're very interested in this very fast stand up. For anyone here in the analytics realm who's especially interested in planning, there's a lot of planning tools out there from like sort of big box vendors, if you will, that you get a system integrator in, and it's well over a year, like a year or 2 years to launch it. We have sort of a theory of like 90 days to get planning up and running really quickly and get the value out of it. And then we allow organizations to continually change. So a big part of our tool is actually to manage, where you can configure everything. You can get the base dashboards, you can get the base content, you can get base configuration for planning, and you can kind of continually change and adapt around that. So that's a final notion I'd like to share if that is a big idea around that. So I think that was all I planned for a demo, but I can take a question or two if anybody has anything. Yes, please. How does it fit with adaptive? Well, I would say that we get that question a lot. On the most base level, we compete directly with adaptive. But what we hear from a lot of organizations is they put adaptive in, but it's a little too finance focused and too short term and too rec driven. So sometimes it might be that long-term, that missing piece, that long-term missing piece. We'll focus a lot in terms of the 5 or 6 year sort of realm around that, that really would talk about and get more really into those things like the roles, the attrition, the mobility, and what those true gaps are. I think some of the things I was sharing before around getting to the gaps and really understanding that those future really important discussions around it are things that might not be fully addressed by a more budget-oriented approach. Is that what you're thinking too, or?
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, our finance team uses adaptive, and so anything that treads into their space is going to be considered no.
Right.
And that's just finance, right?
Right.
Even the predictive and the forecasting pieces that you have in here, that's their domain.
Right.
Guarded jealousy. So
Yeah.
it's a hard sell.
It's a key question. We're seeing that there's always a cycle also when you're doing stuff with a system like that that's attached to the HRMS, where there's a cycle where it's funny that no's can become yeses over a period of time once some key sort of executive ask is not met. So that's kind of like the process we're seeing, is that if you're a Workday or SAP, huge budget, all these things like that, but it's never going to be your number one product or your number two or your number three. So you're on the sort of the middle burner at best. And so all the people out here, it's a question for all the ones here, they have Prism too, right? They're all specializing and innovating. And according to a lot of the Gartner stuff lately, best of breed is in fashion right now. So we're gonna go with that. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, great. So anyway, if anyone wants to schedule a more in-depth demo, we get into actually the how-to. I didn't really get into like how you do all the planning and stuff like that. I kind of just did it for a second. Chris is over here. If you feel like scheduling that, we'd love to talk to you more. And it's been a great conference, so thanks for showing up for the demo.